When emergency first responders were overwhelmed by Los Angeles County's most destructive fire yet, a band of surfers, along with their neighbors and friends, stepped up to defend their home turf in Malibu. Their devotion to home drove them to show up for their community during the fire and for years afterward. And now, a model they call the Community Brigade program could change everything, leading to more lives and more homes saved during the increasing wildfires across not just California, but the world. Join reporter Adriana Cargill from KCRW, NPR's All Things Considered, Crooked Media, and more, as she investigates a wildfire story that is not depressing, but is, in fact, a clear hope for the future. Listen now to Sandcastles, an award-winning podcast about home, how we create it, and why we fight so hard for it. Welcome to Important Not Important. My name is Quinn, and this is science for people who give a shit. Folks, there's a lot going on out there. Our world is changing and being changed every single day, and you can take part in that change. I talk to the smartest, most impactful people on the planet to provide you with the inspiration and tools you need to feel better and to fight for a better future for everyone. Our guests are scientists and doctors, nurses and journalists, policymakers, farmers, engineers, educators, astronauts. If you want to be inspired to find out how to make radical change, hit the subscribe button right now to get even more conversations, stories, and tools coming soon. You can also scroll through the feed or go to podcast.importantnotimportant.com to find 120 plus evergreen episodes covering everything from clean energy to cancer and artificial intelligence to regenerative agriculture. Some quick housekeeping. You can send questions, thoughts, and feedback to us on Twitter at importantnotimp, or you can email us at questions@importantnotimportant.com. You can also join tens of thousands of other leaders and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter at newsletter.importantnotimportant.com. Get the most vital science news, plus exclusive analysis and action steps. And third, you can find new, impactful work on the front lines of the future at importantjobs.com. If you already work for a company or an organization doing that work, you can list your open roles there for very affordable rates and get them in front of our entire community. In this week's conversation, I am so excited to talk with Vida Asiegbu and Anthony Oni, two incredible climate venture capitalists with fascinating backgrounds, and these two are working to not only slow the climate crisis, as if that's not enough, but even more so, to build a vastly more inclusive VC industry along the way. I learned so much from talking with these two humans, and I know you will too. For avocado green brands, sustainability comes first. They craft their GOTS-certified organic mattresses, pillows, and bedding with natural materials sourced from their organic farms in India in their own clean energy-powered facility in Los Angeles, where their team shares a singular purpose: to raise the bar for what it means to be a sustainable business. Avocado is climate neutral certified for net zero emissions and donates 1% of all revenue to environmental nonprofits through its membership with 1% for the Planet. Find out what it means to sleep organic at avocadomattress.com. My guests today are Vida Asiegbu and Anthony Oni, and together we are talking about building a radically more inclusive investment ecosystem, which it's a pretty low bar, and just in time because things are blowing up in more way than one. Vida and Anthony, welcome.
Hey, Quinn. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you spending the time. Vida and Anthony, take turns, whatever works. If you could tell the people real quick who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I'll kick it off. Anthony Oni. I am now serving as a managing partner of what is called the Elevate Future Fund, which is a fund that's part of the Energy Impact Partners that's really focused on creating a clean energy transition, making investments in the clean energy space. And the fund that we manage, Elevate Future Fund, is focused on helping us move to a clean energy future, but ensuring that we also build a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable future by making investments in the underrepresented groups in the U.S.
Rock and roll, no small task.
And and I'm a principal within the Elevate Future Fund, and I work on the investment side to ensure that we have all the right all the right companies that we want to have represented in our portfolio across our three different approaches. Within Elevate, we are investing within the direct equity side of things. We're also providing credit capital, and we're also making investments in the ecosystem and ensuring that there is alignment with other funds, incubators, and accelerators. And so we are investing in them as well.
Awesome. Covering your bases. No small task, but we are all appreciative of it for sure. Thank you for sharing that. So before we get really into this thing, I like to start with one important question. It's a little preposterous, but it sets a tone for this fiasco a little bit. So instead of asking you to repeat your entire life story, as fascinating as I'm sure that is, I like to ask Vida and Anthony, why are you vital to the survival of the species? I encourage you to be bold. You're here for a reason. Anthony's already laughing at me, which is pretty typical for this question.
No, it's a great question. I think there's a collective we in response to this answer. I dare not say that I am that critical in the grand scheme of things, but I think the work that we're doing and what we represent is very, very critical. So in a couple ways, I'll try to address that, and I'm sure Vida also has some input on this as well. But why are we critical? I think when you look at just stepping back, you look at the challenges that we're facing as a society. Two of the greatest challenges that I see in front of us right now, it's around climate change and this transition to a more sustainable future, and also some of the social unrest and social issues that we see in our life. And these things are getting more pronounced unless there is action, unless there is interdiction, unless we are more intentional about how we are solving these issues. So what we represent is that change, is that impact. In the sense that we are looking to address some of these issues. And I think the role that we have, especially the work that we're doing at Elevate Future Fund, it's really tackling two of the most challenging problems, right? Around climate change, around social issues. And I think the collective we, the other like-minded individuals, the other folks who are working in this space that we also have great fortune of working alongside, recognize that, if we don't do something now, to start to address some of these issues and start to rectify and fix some of these, then our future doesn't look as bright as we think it ought to be from a climate perspective, but also from addressing some of the social inequities that we've seen. And quite oftentimes, these are not issues that you see outside your door today, but they manifest over time. They manifest in 5, 10, a period of time. And by then, it's more than likely too late to do something right then. So we have to start now to try to address those. So I think we're important in the sense that we are trying to solve these issues, and we're trying to solve them with the best available talent, the best available resources that we have today, and really make sure that we're making an impact, not only for our lifetime, but for the future generations ahead.
Yeah, that works. I mean, you could just do this whole thing. You don't even need me at this point. That's fantastic. Vida, what about you? And again, it can be, as part of a team, why do you feel like this has to be you?
Absolutely. So the thing for me is that I know that I have the ability to consolidate the knowledge from the experiences that I've had in order to provide solutions for others that are either going through a similar experience, the same experience or otherwise. And so I have received this opportunity to do exactly what I want to do, taking my finance experience from over the years and thinking through what the founder experience is and what that looks like, given the experience that I've seen watching my parents as entrepreneurs themselves. I am marrying all of the opportunities and all of the learnings that I have been able to see, observe, and experience myself in order to help founders and company owners that require support from a person who knows. And I had a conversation earlier this week about just about the value of conveying late stage company experience from my investment banking experience, and being able to help a company that is in its early stages, in its nascent stage, grow and develop to be that late stage company that will be able to have an impact in the market. And so I would say that the fact that I'm able to take the opportunities that or the experiences that I've had to this point and to convey that to others is something that is unique to my experience and unique for me as a person of color within the spaces, and sometimes the first and only person of color within the spaces that I've navigated. So I'm helping others that are coming into the same or pioneering in the same way that I have in the past to do that for the businesses that they have, that they're trying to grow in the market. And it's a privilege to be able to do this. Sometimes you wonder why you have the experiences that you have, or why you go through certain things, but I know that no experience is a waste. And so I'm making sure that I'm recycling, reusing, and repurposing the experiences that I've had for others that require that support from me.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that perspective. I mean, I feel like that's something we all grow. And of course, look, I'm a very privileged straight white man in America in 2021. My challenge is, whether those done to me or self-induced, pale in comparison to so many folks. But I do feel like as we get older, we get a little bit more of that perspective, like you were saying, that nothing we go through, no challenge is actually a waste. There are ways to incorporate that into the way we live our lives every day, but also the work that we do and the way we can try to directly and indirectly mentor people who are coming up behind us to say, like, I've been there. Like, I can't get you through it, but I can help you think about it a little more differently with some perspective, hopefully.
And I appreciate that, Quinn, because if you think about the individuals that we're supporting with the Elevate Future Fund, it is going to be a slate of entrepreneurs that haven't had all the capital and the resources available to them. And so the fact that we do have the opportunity to provide that to these entrepreneurs that we want to bring into the ecosystem is incredible. And the fact that we can use the experiences that we've developed and the knowledge that we've garnered thus far in order to help them is incredibly important. And we're so grateful to have that impact.
I love it. I mean, look, I do some angel stuff. I'm prodded to start some sort of rolling fund to address all the things we talk about, but don't have the bandwidth to do this sort of thing. But also, it's not difficult to look around. And this is, when I first learned about you guys from Kim and Sophie over at Climate Tech VC, who do just such a tremendous job covering your area. And I know you guys work with Kim, right? It's not difficult to look at a place like Silicon Valley, or where most of the venture capital stuff is, and go, oh, it's mostly white. It's another thing to really look at the statistics and go, oh, only 15% or so of VC partners are women, and women founders get less than 4 or 5% of VC dollars, and people of color are barely on the register when it comes to LPs and GPs. It's more essential than ever, full stop. Forget everything else that's going on, that becomes much more equitable on both sides, much more cooperative and inclusive. But of course, we're also now in this era. It's not, it's not really a moment. The climate crisis is here. It's here for the rest of our lives and our children's lives. And not to put you guys on the spot, but when I look at my age and the rest of my lifetime, I mean, decarbonization is the mission of our lifetime, of our work span, right? And the work that we have to do, the transitions that all of our industries and systems will have to go through, and the effects we're going to feel no matter what, really only change more radically from here. And I've written a little about this, but like with COVID, the choices that we've made up to this point are what got us here. And so it's very clear that we need a more cooperative and inclusive range of perspectives to start to address, both through adaptation and mitigation, these enormous variety of often connected issues that we are facing. So it seems like there has never been a better time than to have folks like yourselves involved in this sort of thing. And not just because of who you are, but also, again, those experiences you've had in the places and industries you've worked in before. So I'm curious if you could each talk for a moment about your past careers that got you here and what might be transferable as you bring it to this newer endeavor. Because again, two of my sort of favorite angles lately are, why do you have to do this? Why do you feel like you have to do this? But also from an outside perspective, why does it have to be you? And both of you are, you didn't just join as LPs with a bunch of money when you were young and you've been raised in the VC fund system. You're bringing these fascinating perspectives to it that could be so constructive to what you were trying to do with this fund. So if you could just take a little time and talk about that so that people have a landscape for who you are and what you're bringing to the table.
No, thank you. This notion of experiences is so important. And I think more and more now we're starting to realize that in order to have a better solve, a more complete solve for the challenges, these experiences are things of value that we each uniquely bring to the table. And what we're talking about in a lot of cases is making sure that we're being very thoughtful about inviting others, right? Whether by through capital, through voice, to participate in how these things are solved. For me, it started early on, before a career. My father, I was born in Morristown, New Jersey. My father worked at Bell Labs at the time. And growing up with a father that is an engineer at heart, you end up building everything in life. Anything that gets broken in a house, we don't go to the store and just buy a new one. We have to fix it. No, you got to fix it. I spent my childhood just fixing. Literally, I was doing home improvement projects at the age of like 4 years old. In all the houses we've had. But it was a really good experience for me though, because just if you think about Bell Labs and what they've done, which we still live with a lot of the innovations that came out of there. Oh, yeah. This notion of being able to build something, especially building something that's scaled, has always fascinated me. And I had the chance to go to school at Auburn University down south, and that as a whole was just a phenomenal experience. A lot of life-shaping experiences as part of that. Graduated and ended up working in the utility business. But I'm going to tell you, I never wanted to work in the utility business. It was the farthest thing from my mind. I didn't really know anything about the utility business. I graduated right after the dot-com burst, and my goal at the time was to go work in Silicon Valley, go work in the startup space and go build some stuff. And I ended up working for Southern Company, one of the largest utilities in the Southeast, based in the Southeast, and worked in Birmingham, Alabama for a subsidiary company called Alabama Power. And during that time, I had a whole host of roles. But one of the things that I came to appreciate, someone that has a builder mindset, is that the utility, in a lot of ways, is a great construct for how we're trying to solve some of these problems. In the sense that you have an obligation to serve really everyone in your service area, no matter who you are, right? So you've got to build your system to serve all, not just a few. But you also have to make sure that you are you're understanding those customers' needs, and you're spending time with those customers. And that's where really the power of relationships really was really underscored for me. One of the roles I had working at the utilities was in the economic and community development organization. And in that role, I remember my boss at the time, he told me, he said, Anthony, if you're in the office more than 2 days consecutively in a week, you weren't doing your job. And so my job was was to go out to the rural parts of our state, meet with mayors, county commissioners, folks working to improve the communities. And you had to build these relationships and this connectivity. And you had to do it in a way where you were really working to try to position these communities for economic growth. Work through leadership programming, work through strategic planning, working through asset mapping to figure out the best position these communities could be in. And you're building something for the long term. And when we talk about this, this transition in energy and climate change, it does require us to have just a wider aperture on how we are thinking about building that, and really how we use capital to build that. You mentioned earlier on just some of the disparities that we're seeing. One stat that just continues to just blow my mind. It really I think speaks to the challenge when we're talking about how we solve this in a more complete way. This was a stat from the National Academy of Sciences. It was a research they did a while ago. But when you look at the amount of global financial assets under management, this is global. It's about $69 million globally. This makes up, mutual funds, hedge funds, private equity, venture equity, and whatnot. You have fewer than 1.3% that is managed by women and people of color. And so when you appreciate that for a little bit, right? When you've got $69.1 trillion global assets under management, and only 1.3 of that is managed by women and people of color. And in the U.S., it's less than 1%. Of founders have access to venture capital. You realize that you do have to make sure that access to capital is important, because again, you will not have a complete picture, right? Mm-hmm. And as we're going through this transition of sustainability, this focus on sustainability, you come to realize that this, by far, decarbonizing our world and economy is by far the largest economic opportunity that we will see in our lifetime. It's bigger than what we've seen in the past. It's bigger than the whole .coms and the internet boom as a whole. And so it's really important that as we're thinking about how to solve these problems, especially the role that capital plays, that we are being very thoughtful about how we're making sure that more people have access to this capital. And we're being thoughtful about how these solutions are being solved. And in large part, they're solved by increasing an aperture and making sure that people who have different lived experiences have a hand and have a path to helping solve these challenges. If we let it be solved by the same people, who traditionally have solved some of these problems or being involved in the innovation space, I fear we won't have a complete solve. And beyond just, whatever the technical solves are, what we're starting to realize now is that, I think you see this pressure from large institutional investors, when we focus on ESG issues, is that what we do and what we solve is important, but how we solve it is equally important, right? You go through the past where you've seen the effects of the industrial growth that we've had in the U.S., right? A lot of great things came out of it, but also how we went about doing some of those things weren't probably the right way to do it, right? We've seen the same thing, I think, even now. We're starting to question some of the hyper growth we've seen in the tech space and the social space as a whole, right? And I think as we go through solving climate, we go through a more sustainable future, we want to think about what we're doing, but how we do this well, making sure that we have broader communities that have a chance to participate, that have a chance to win in this. We know that underrepresented communities, Black and brown communities across the U.S., unfortunately, bear the brunt of some of the environmental justice issues that we see.
Sure. And
so by allowing more people who have different experiences, folks like Vida and I and others who traditionally have not participated in the front end of some of these really opportunistic, important economies and markets, participate in a way funded by capital, but also supported by ecosystem, I do think we'll actually get a better solve, and we'll have a more complete picture in shaping that future. So I think those experiences are important. So for me, the time that I spent working in the utility space really grounded me on some of those really important aspects of how you serve, not just the few, but the many, and really everyone. The other thing that was really important for me in the utility space was actually working on some of these issues around access. I was very fortunate during the time to work on a lot of different social impact projects that are really focused on education, and collaborated with a lot of great companies like Apple and Alabama Power and Southern Company and working on some of these issues and trying to solve these. And what you realize is that these problems didn't get started yesterday, right? They're systemic issues within the communities, and they really kind of fall into a lot of pipeline issues where we're not seeing as many people involved in some of these things in the early stage. So making sure we have more people going into these fields in engineering, making sure we have more folks focused on environment. That's also part of that solve, and making sure that we have a more complete picture in the future.
Well, and that's what when you look at, it's not just what movies does Disney put out, or where does this pipeline go, or whatever, or how do we fix this change? And I'm sure you've seen as the parent of a young soccer player and so on, and they constantly asking why, right? But it does get you to the root of the problem, which is not just like, how are we going to do this or what are we going to do? You got to go all the way back to like, wait, who is actually participating in the question asking? Who is actually in the room when we're trying to decide how are we going to even think about doing this? And if you're excluding the same people we've always excluded, you're inherently, after all this time, going to get to very similar answers to what got us here. So it starts with that, right? It starts with that representation of folks in the room to ask questions like, should we be doing this? How should we be thinking about this? Who else can we cooperate with to do this? Vida, can you talk a little bit about what that's meant for your journey along the way to get to where you are?
No, I would say that it has been important for me to understand just what the problems are and the needs of the people that do seek or that need to be included. Mm-hmm. And that's where the benefit of my experience has been so helpful. As a daughter of entrepreneurs, I have seen what the founder journey has looked like over the years. Still part of the founder journey. My parents are still involved in their businesses. And I have been able to extrapolate that understanding to other areas for the founders that do come to me today, asking for help, support, advice, in with regard to what they're doing. And then also this is translated into providing support for other investors as they're thinking through how to support founders from their vantage point. I would say that having a community of people who understand what you're going through as a founder or as an investor, that these are, that is something that is incredibly important to have. And for these, I guess you could say, like, these communities of diverse individuals who do not have, the legacy of resources and sweat equity put forth in their direction, that it has been incredibly important to really, use that community as a resource for that catch up that needs to happen.
Sure.
And so being in the midst of that and supporting with the experiences that I've had and that I've been able to develop over the years, that has been important for me as a contributor to this environment and this ecosystem and this universe of people that are working to enter into the market. I would say that having that opportunity to just connect with people is something that is important. And I hear it all the time that the community is more than just the transaction. It's about building the relationship and having that support, knowing that if truly, honestly and truly, that if there is a need, that anyone could send a message or pick up the phone and call you in order to get advice or get a different perspective. I would say that being a part of that and being in the flow of that has been important for me in order to support founders, either that I'm investing in or that I'm supporting, through the advice that I'm giving.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. We can all read these news headlines about a jet stream slowing down and this, but I mean, climate change it's the air you breathe and the water you drink. It's inherently very personal and very local. And having those relationships and those touch points, if not having your own to those issues, whether you came up with unable to afford water or power, or it was dirty, or the infrastructure didn't support it, or working with those folks who are now trying to become founders because they know those problems better than anyone. That's what's really going to get this done, right? And again, the perspectives are there. I mean, we've had 4 economic sort of revolutions, right, in the past couple hundred years. You got agriculture, and it's 2021, and 99% of rural land is still owned by white Americans, and half of that's by people over 65. Industrialization, right? And still in 2021, 60% of Black Americans live near a coal plant. Microchips, like, was it the 80s and 90s? So those companies are going public while the war on drugs is going crazy. Online and mobile, we saw last year with COVID. I mean, how many kids of color have no online access at all, much less like a device to put it on? So, Black Americans, for the most part, were outright denied the opportunity to participate in these, if not being over-indexed on being exposed and affected by them. And now you've got, just this year, I mean, it's October, and the billions of dollars pouring into climate tech versus even last year, right, which was the most. And you've got all these things going on, and you've got, we're still dealing with COVID, and the red line city blocks are harder than they've ever been. But folks in those communities know those problems best. So I guess, what active steps are you actually taking to make sure you guys are getting the deal flow necessary to make sure that these things are actually coming to you, to carve out not only the space for yourselves and your fund, but also the folks in those communities to say, like, I have to be part of this conversation. I need to be able to judge for myself if we should take part in this deal.
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, I want to let Vida talk about the deal flow piece a bit, but I want to go back to just what you said around just, what we've seen. And it really kind of, I guess, double click on this point around why these lived experiences are so important in solving some of these problems. So I want to brag on one of the investments we've made so far in a company called Charge It Help. Charge It Help is a company that is really focused on what's a really critical infrastructure for this clean energy transition, which is electric charging stations. And what they've done is created a platform and a company that helps maintain that infrastructure, maintain the growing infrastructure for EV charging stations across the U.S. But uniquely, what Camille Terry and Yvette Ellis have done, these are the 2 co-founders of the company. Camille is the CEO of Charge It Help. Because of their lived experiences, they've also built in a workforce training program that's part of the company. And this wasn't done as a bolt-on afterwards or afterthought. This was done on the front end because their lived experiences, allowed them to appreciate the fact that as they're working in probably what is going to be one of the fastest growing industries in just the EV charging stations and electric cars that we see on the roads, they thought it well enough to make sure that they are incorporating a workforce training program so that people within their communities and the communities of where they're going to be servicing and working across the U.S., that's a component of it, right? They're thinking long term about how more people can participate inside this new economy on the ground floor early on. And I think that's part of what you get with this focus on inclusion and focus on making sure that you have access of capital flow to underrepresented founders, in this case to African-American women that typically, broadly speaking, in the past would not have been on the radar of a lot of VCs. And this is the type of solving solutions that you get in market where you actually have a company that is fantastically doing great, working in a very important field to help us transition to a clean energy future, but it's solving that in a way that I doubt would come from your typical, traditional founders that you find in Silicon Valley. You find that this workforce component that's added to it. The fact that they are bringing others along
Sure.
And these are going to be these are great paying jobs. You know, if you look at the stats of what they do, they pay better than average living wages. They're building skill sets and training folks to participate in this new economy. So I just want to say that that's a great example of what we're trying to do and the types of investments that I think give you a better solve, right? Not only in the what, but also how you do that as well. Vida was very instrumental in this investment. So Vida, once you talk more about it, and also talk about the deal flow piece and how we're sourcing.
Absolutely. So as far as the opportunity with Charter Help, I would say that this is the benefit of the relationships that are on the EIP platform. Mm-hmm. And we have the opportunity of conveying deal flow from a number of ways on the platform, through the platform, and so on and so forth. The utilities that we have as the predominant LP base for all of our funds are the utilities, and mm-hmm. they are the ones that are in all the markets that we would want to be in. They are not just on the coast; they're in each and every neighborhood across the country. So they have a unique opportunity sitting and servicing different communities, and so they have that access to companies, to incubators, accelerators that are going to be thoughtful, mindful around the needs of the communities that they serve with, through the utilities that they provide them. And not only that, but we do have a pretty connected platform and advisors and investors on the platform that are able to convey deal flow from different areas. And I think that it is incredibly, it's an incredible network that we have had, given that EIP has been in existence for, going on 6 years now. I think that work in the market is something that cannot be denied, and the market does value our input and our investment. And so there's a bit of deal flow that does come through to us as a result of that. And we are lucky to be the beneficiaries of that. But the other thing for us, and most especially given that we are going earlier in the life cycle, company life cycle, and we are broadening the groups of entrepreneurs that are coming onto the scene within the energy ecosystem, it is important for us to share and grow that network with others that are doing what we are doing.
Sure.
And this is where the investment in the ecosystem has been incredibly important, because it has given us an opportunity to work with others in order to grow the pie of entrepreneurs that are diverse within energy. And we are making sure that we are investing in them and with them through co-investment in the companies that we find to be, interesting, exciting, and that will move the needle when it comes to the needs that we have within the energy transition. And there are amazing programs that have been focused on ensuring that what we are covering with diversity, with workforce development, with all the things that are important to ensure that the energy transition is inclusive. Mm-hmm. We have really good partners in that. The Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, where Charter Help, our first investment, came out of, is a program that has been mindful about address transition within energy. And so they have worked with companies like Charter Help to ensure that the work that they want to do to give back to the communities that they're coming from, that those factors are to be taken into account as they're building the foundation of their organizations and taking that and scaling off of that. So that's why, Charter Help is a company that is so unique that it has an incredibly impactful bleeding edge solution that is marrying the reality of the fact that we do need to make sure that the transition is just and that everyone is a part of the that transition, and that workforce development is, in order to move over the workforce that will, be in these obsolete, or what will become obsolete jobs, are moving forward along with everyone else within the energy transition.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I feel like we just don't spend enough time in policy and in general in society talking about having the real conversation about what this transition is going to look like for so many of these industries. I mean, there was some news this week about how, France has basically identified they did some of the work, and 25% of their, automobile supply chain industry is just going to be gone. And that's enormous. And they don't drive nearly as much as we do. We have to get ahead of this as much as we can. And again, not just for the people who are in it, but I mean, especially those folks, but there's going to be a number of industries like that. And we have to make them as thoughtful and as inclusive as we can. I wonder if, just because I feel like I skipped a beat and you both mentioned this, and I want to help folks understand the picture a little bit. Many of your LPs are some of the country's biggest utilities, which is so fascinating. Can you just briefly talk for a moment about the benefits of having those institutions behind you? Because, in a moment like this, they are being challenged to adapt and mitigate like everyone else, if not more so. So it's exciting to see them saying, like, we're going to actively take part in trying to draw up the next generation of these investors in these companies and infrastructure. So what is that like, and what is sort of the wind behind you from having those folks in your corner?
I spent 20 years working in the utility space and really come to appreciate really the role that they've played in the communities that they serve. Again, there's this obligation to serve, right, to provide clean, safe, reliable power to everyone. But for us, one of the unique opportunities that our investors have, and our investors, it's mostly all utilities, but we have others like Cox or Microsoft and others inside the space. But utilities, by and large, give us, I think, a really unique vantage point and unique way to deploy capital. So one of the things to know is that most utilities in the U.S., I think certainly for the ones that are part of our fund, are 100 plus years old, right? So these are entities that have been in communities for over a century. And within the role they've played, and I mentioned relationships earlier, these utilities, certainly when I came from, have just tons of relationships within multiple communities in the areas. And so what we're able to do is leverage those relationships within those communities and really overlay this venture capital, construct on top of that to make sure that within these communities that they serve, that is not traditionally, in your east and west coast areas, that we are leveraging those relationships, leveraging the good work that these utilities have done to make sure that capital has flowed to these communities, especially in the accelerators and incubators that these communities and utilities have already invested in. So a great example is there's an energy accelerator of all places in Birmingham, Alabama, that's run by a good friend of mine named Nate Schmidt. It's part of TechStar's program. But the utility there, Alabama Power, was instrumental to getting this incubator set up. And it's one that's really focused on energy and really focused on the energy future. And so we are able to partner with that program and really all the other utilities and their different programs and incubators, accelerators in these communities to ensure that we are identifying and looking for those companies that have a role in shaping that energy future, using that as a pipeline to look at underrepresented founders that are doing some amazing things, in places like Birmingham, Alabama, or other parts of where we're focused on in the rest of America, as you've heard before. We're also using these utilities in a way that's really unique for our diligence process. So, we'll come back and talk about EIP and the EIP platform. But one of the things that is really key for us is that because of that utility and relationship engagement, we have access to just an enormous amount of resources and expertise within these companies. So if we are one day looking at electric transportation or EV charging stations, we have just a tremendous amount of resources to draw on from those utility partners who have people who've been spending decades working on this stuff. If we want to pivot to, electrification or, carbon capture or whatever it may be,
transmission.
We have transmission. I mean, we all the building blocks, all the key building blocks for that clean energy transition, we have access to that domain expertise, those resources through our utility partners. So it really gives us an unmatched ability to not only due diligence, but also to help these startups, right? To give them the exposure to experts in field to make sure that they are refining their product, refining their services, and making sure that they have access to the same type of resources that other folks have in building these companies up. The EIP platform that I think is just fantastic in that regard. It was started in 2015 by our founder, our general partner, Hans Kobler, who spent a lot of his time at GE Capital working on corporate venture capital. And he's done a lot of work in that space and brought it to the utility space now, where we have what I think is a very unique collaborative model where we are helping utilities peer around that corner, looking at new business models, new innovations in the space, and then they in turn help us with the diligence, but also in the type of resources that we can bring to bear. One of the things that's really important for all of us as we make these investments is what I call the post-investment support, making sure that beyond just that initial outlay of capital, that we actually have the expertise necessary and the support necessary. And so we've got a really great research and innovation commercialization team as part of Energy Impact Partners that helps us, take companies like Charger Help and others that we're looking to make investments in, and really, by sheer force and will, make them market leaders in their domain by that access to resources and expertise that you otherwise wouldn't get. So I think utilities are, in a lot of ways, not only just, again, helping us embed in that community, helping us get access to those key communities and those key relationships, and making sure venture flows. The other aspect that's becoming really increasingly important is that pipeline. It's ensuring that we are working in those educational spaces, and particular focus from mine is around HBCUs, that we are making sure that, we are building the next generation of folks who can work in these fields. We know that, as we've seen in the past, these transitions as a whole are more disruptive to people of color. And so to the extent that we can get students ready, prepared, we are talking now to a whole host of HBCU college universities. We've had really great conversations with folks here in Atlanta and the AUC, and really working to prepare the next generation of students to participate in this really growing economy.
So I want to get specific about that because, our goal we always try to work towards, because like hearing, as constructive as it can be, hearing people talk about climate change for an hour sometimes can be a little sad. So, or COVID or whatever it might be. So we like to empower our community through specific things to, one, if it just helps them feel better, great. But two, things that drive systemic change and how they can get involved, because we have so many people in our community who have either left to do more impactful work in climate or public health or whatever it might be, or they're young people who are trying to get involved in this sort of thing. And that goes down to that college level, or even on the community college level, which obviously we do such a poor job of supporting in this country, but it's such a huge, huge class of folks who can contribute. So, you are hoping and working towards a future that is not only more equitable and inclusive among the general population, but specifically in this industry. And like you said, you're already talking to the HBCUs, and there's this huge amount of young folks who are probably just soaking this conversation up. You didn't start here, though, as we have discussed. How would you counsel those young folks specifically in some of those conversations you're having and now to get started, to, be a wedge that can start to make a difference, to carve some space for themselves in having some practical change?
I go back to how I got into the technology space beyond just the exposure I had from my father. But I remember being in the gym. I think it was my junior, senior year in high school, and a career counselor came in and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you guys about what you want to do in the future." And I don't think I had a great sense on exactly what that was going to be for me until they started talking about technology and the opportunities that were in this new burgeoning online world. And it wasn't until they started talking about just, the financial opportunities, like how much money could you make being in these fields, it really kind of caught my attention. And I think today what I would tell folks is, and what I do talk to folks about is not only, I think that these are fields that will allow you to not only financially take care of yourself, but others in your family. But I think, these are what I call noble cause roles, right? And noble cause fields where you are doing something that is for the betterment of society, for the betterment of our planet. And that is something that I think when you think about how you want to spend your time, you want to make sure that there's that alignment around something that you really want to do, right? That's a driver. And there's just so much more optionality in the types of work and roles that you have now in the future. And so I do think that, for students listening in, this is again, the largest economy that we will see in our lifetime. And it's also one that, again, requires a software, your lived experiences. You might be thinking that, hey, I don't know anything about clean energy. I don't know anything about the environment.
Right.
But man, I'll tell you that, you do know about your community. You do know about your how you were raised and where you're from. And those are the folks that we need to participate, because solving a problem that's in rural Alabama, it's going to be very different than solving that same climate change problem that's in San Francisco, right? Or wherever it may be elsewhere. So there is value in that experience that you have. We are also working to make sure that the fundamentals around these concepts are being taught. And so as we spend time with HBCU leaders and administrators and teachers, that we're making sure that how we do those key learnings are important. For the past couple of years, I've been really involved in the education space and worked on a project I'm pretty excited about. It's called the Propel Center. Okay. It's an effort that has got Apple and Tim Cook and that bunch involved, and also our senior leadership at Southern Company involved as well, to build something that is transformative for HBCUs across the U.S. And the Propel Center is an augmentation to the incredible work that HBCUs are doing now. You've got to recognize that HBCUs have played just an important role in the fabric of the African American community and experience. You think about just the number of people who graduate in engineering fields. By and large, you have more of those folks come out of HBCUs than anywhere else. And as we're looking to the future, what Propel Center aims to do is really three main things. One is it's a focus on augmented curriculum, where we are co-building curriculum with people like Apple and people like Southern Company and the other sponsors that we're looking to bring on, and making sure that we're augmenting that with the curriculum that's taught at HBCUs. So you can start to learn about, machine learning and AI and the role that they can play in the future. And not one of those things where you studied in school and you get out and then you have to relearn it because the corporation or the company you're working for is you were maybe several books behind, a series behind. You're learning in real time. So there's no sort of real time curriculum that for the future is part of what the Propel Center is going to do and support HBCUs across the country. The other is kind of what we've talked about a little bit, right? It's around these economic opportunities and economic opportunities for people of color and for graduates of HBCUs. So whether you're a freshman or you're a senior or you work in the HBCU space, part of the curriculum that's going to be taught is how you start a company. How do you, the things that you learn going through an accelerator or, that I learned going through an accelerator are going to be taught early on, so that students early on have that kind of exposure, all the way up to, providing accelerator, incubator support, and funding long term, so that you have these ready-made pathways for you. So when you have an idea that you want to change the world, you know where to go. You know what the next step is. I think that's incredibly important, especially when you start thinking about what could come out of that and the generational wealth that folks will not have exposure to if we do that in a very intentional way. And then lastly is around leadership, making sure that we are being very deliberate about building the leadership for the future, ensuring that we are training the next generation of folks to participate locally, in state and federally around some of the, again, systemic issues that we see facing our communities. And I think part of that also is around, exposure to things like clean energy, exposure to the impacts of climate change and social justice and whatnot. So we've been incredibly excited to have great partners like Apple and Southern and others that we're bringing on board to participate in this. Also, the college universities in the HBCU space that have indicated interest. So we're building this right here in Atlanta. I'm a founder of this, but we've got an incredible team that is working on this. Matter of fact, we just brought in a fantastic gentleman by the name of Gene Wade, who comes from Oakland, who's spent all his life really working in the social impact space, in the educational space. So we're excited about what that comes. But I think these are the types of partnerships that we're going to see and need, coupled with venture capitalists, to make sure that we're taking a very holistic picture of what's needed, but also a holistic way of how we solve these issues going forward.
I love that. I mean, might as well put this just incredibly huge corporate power to use, to really elevate that next generation. And like you said, it's not just identifying deal flow from somebody with an incredible pitch deck that actually passes, muster with all your utilities who say like, yes, that information checks out for this market. It's going further back and looking at these kids and saying like, this is how you start a company, and you might not know anything about clean energy or transmission or battery storage or whatever, but you know about your sense of place and your lived experience. And we can teach you clean energy, man. Like we can teach you batteries. Like that shit's not hard. It's that other stuff that's irreplaceable that some nerd can come in and like just not understand how to do the work on the ground and work with the community to make it work for everyone. And I think we've seen examples of that failing over and over again. So I love that you guys are going further, and we'll definitely put the Propel program in the show notes and try to highlight that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, this notion of what you do, but also how you do it is so important. The other piece that's also fascinating for me, and I've been very fortunate to be a founder too. So, I think Vida talked about, her experiences and how it shapes, her engagement with some of these startups that we're looking at. I for one never thought in a million years that I would be in the venture capital space, but it was because of exposure. And I certainly didn't believe that I could be a founder and entrepreneur in this space. But again, it's to that exposure. So to the extent that we can give that exposure early on, I think some really transformative things could happen.
Awesome. Vida, anything specific that you would say to the young folks out there who are coming up? Because, I mean, again, if you take the, not to dial it down to the surface level, but Black women are just not a part of the venture capital system in any significant way. And every step you take and success you have can help elevate more folks behind you. So obviously you've got enough on your plate just doing the deal flow on a day-to-day basis. But what would give me some examples of specific things that young Black women can do to become a part of this? And again, it can come from any different direction, whatever your lived experiences may be. But what are some transferable things you feel like could apply to those folks as they try to come and follow in your footsteps a little bit?
So one of the things that has been incredibly important is reaching out to different people that are in the seats already, and just having that connectivity, learning from everyone, because given the reality that you just mentioned, there are not enough of us to go around to help coach up and teach all the women who could be interested in the venture ecosystem. And so I would say that to the extent that whoever you are, that you are able to find someone or a group of people who you trust, who you can speak with and who you can talk to about your ideas and who you can learn from, that is absolutely important. And I have been able to, over the years, develop different people from white men to black men, Latino women, who have been helpful for me in terms of providing advice, providing their perspective. And these are the things that I've aggregated over the years in order to shape my understanding and my profile and investment style. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that all the information that you can get your hands on is absolutely important. Reading and just staying abreast of what's going on in the market, that is absolutely something that, whether or not you're talking to me about investment banking or otherwise, or investing, understanding what is going on in the market and just honing in the craft by staying abreast and having an opinion about what is transpiring, that is also something that is very important and incredibly valuable to the market. Information is power. We're entering into this age where that transfer of information is the currency that we're working with. And so developing your knowledge base is important in this industry and will take you very far, as far as being successful here, making the right investments, making the right judgment call on deals, or even saying thanks but no thanks to any opportunity that may not be a great fit, and even providing that knowledge or that feedback to the entrepreneurs that you're speaking with that do need time, or that do need some knowledge in order to go back and refine what it is that they're doing. All of that is helpful within the ecosystem.
I love that. Thank you. I have kept you guys for quite a while here. I'm going to ask you last couple quick questions that we ask everyone, and then we'll let you go back to saving the world here. For both of you, again, just briefly, when was the first time in your life when you realized, whether yourself or part of a group or a team or a class or whatever it might be, that you had the power of change or the power to do something meaningful?
Man, you got some great questions, Quinn. The two parts are for me. One is one that I hope I never forget. That comes to mind. It happened when I was very young. I was on my way to school, and my father was driving me because I missed the bus, I think. Mm-hmm. And as we were headed to school, we came across a car that was directly in front of us that had caught fire. And the driver at the time was out of the car, but the fire started to engulf the car. And there was a police officer that actually did have a fire extinguisher in hand when we came upon the car that was trying to put out the fire. And this police officer was quite timidly trying to put out this fire. So he would spray the hose and go back, spray the hose and go back. But he didn't really look like he was really trying to put this fire out. Mm-hmm. And I remember my father just, getting out the car, walking up, grabbing the fire extinguisher from the police officer and quite aggressively putting out the fire. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I've just remarked on, being a bystander and being active in solving something or fixing something. Mm-hmm. And he didn't need license. He didn't need permission. He acted to take care of something. And so I think early on that kind of gave me the sense that, hey, look, it may not be, an issue that you've been, granted authority to solve, or you've been knighted to solve, or, but you are empowered to solve it. Mm-hmm. Your very presence and witness to something is enough. And so I think for me, it's manifested in a whole lot of different ways. One of which was while I was working at Southern Company, I started to work a lot in our renewable energy space. And after working in this space for a while, I came to a couple of insights that, hey, I think there's a market to help connect more customers to renewable energy infrastructure and carbon credit infrastructure. And I took it to our leadership. And, at the time I was just a director in the company. And I took it to our CEO at Alabama Power, and he thought it was a decent idea. And it's kind of like you play the video games with bosses. You get beat level 1 and you get to level 2, level 3.
Right.
So I finally made it to the CEO of Southern Company, and essentially, I discussed with him. I think we should start a company. I want to start a company inside of Southern Company, and this is a pretty big multi-billion-dollar company. And it's like I want to do a startup, and he listened. He didn't kick me out of his office, but he listened and gave me the funding to start it. So I started a company called Cloverly, which is a sustainability as a service platform that helps brands get access to carbon credit infrastructure through an API. So we built an API for carbon offsets. And so while I was at Southern, I had 2 roles. I was vice president, ultimately, of the multi-state region in external affairs and communications, and also the CEO of a startup. But I was CEO of a startup, of a clean tech startup that I felt empowered by myself, to take the actions necessary and have the discussions necessary to go create. And I think as I spent 2.5 years working on the startup that has since now spun out of Southern Company, and we've raised money from SoftBank and others, and it's growing fantastically. We've got a leadership team in place that's doing just an incredible job. I've now transitioned as a founder and on the board. It's again a reminder that, going back to your last question and what you advise folks is that, you are empowered to solve these problems in your own way, right? I didn't have that, a full resume of a clean energy background or
right.
Working in the SaaS space, or whatnot. You saw something that you thought could be better, and you leaned in and took that action. So, I would say just, for me, it's just knowing that you can, and feeling empowered, especially when you start thinking about some of these really big issues like climate change and social injustice that we see in our society. Everyone is empowered. I'm hoping everyone who's listening feels empowered to take some sort of action, big or small, and try to figure out how to solve that. I
love that. Thank you for sharing that. Vida, what about you? What was that moment for you?
A few years out of undergrad, I had the opportunity to go back to my first company as a revenue generator. And I became a corporate beverage buyer for a convenience store chain that is based in the Southeast. And I would say that opportunity that I had to lead a team and to drive the strategy around the relationships with the Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper Snapple group, as it was known then, and managing those relationships, but really setting a plan and a strategy for how we were going to engage and then market to the customers, and be or at least order our placement in the different regions that we operated in, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area, in Florida, in the Atlanta area. That was a great opportunity for me. And a person, as the only person or female of color doing that level of work, it was incredible being able to have a woman of color on my team look up to me. She was older too, but she looked up to me as a person who had been able to conquer the barrier of getting to this position.
Sure.
and having this level of authority within the work that we were doing together. And so that was amazing for me. And it gave me the opportunity to, set the terms of my team, get my team the raises that they had deserved for years before I started. And it was a place where I started to play around with my management skills and opportunity, and really leaning into making sure that the team that I was working with was taken care of, under my care. or under my watch while I was a buyer. So that's where it started for me.
That sounds like quite the revelation.
Yeah, for sure.
So work is hard. Vita's skipping Halloween. My man's got to attend a soccer game that could go one way or the other. What otherwise, when we're not working, what is your self-care? What is your off time? What is your trashy TV, whatever it might be, walks in nature? Everybody's got something. How are you dealing right now?
For me, it's finding just the time to spend with. I've got 2 boys, and so the time I spend with them is just is my relief, because the world through their eyes is fascinating. It's hilarious. It's funny, and it's just completely different. And so I've got one that is a soccer player now. That is, as I told you earlier in the call. We spend a lot of time on the field, and the other that is just an avid reader of everything you put in front of him. It's funny. We had a parent-teacher conference the other day, and I told my wife, the feedback we get from our teachers is that our kid doesn't want to put down his book to read before class starts. And I don't know if I should do anything about that or not, but
it's a tough one, right?
It's a tough one, for me, it's really spending time with the family, spending time with the boys. It's just such a relief. And I think one thing I've learned through COVID, I think we've all learned, is that just anytime we have a family is just so precious. So you got to soak it up while you can.
100%. Vida, what about you?
So I guess little secret here, one of my primary love languages is quality time. And so having the opportunity to spend quality time with family and friends and catching up, and just having the time to learn about what everyone else is doing, it really does break up the monotony of spending all the time that I have to myself working and such. So I do try to take as much time as I can, whether it be seeing someone in person or phone call with grandma. I try to do all of it during the time that I have open and available. And that really does help recharge me. It helps to ground me.
Sure.
and it helps keep things very interesting.
I love that. Yeah, it's I feel like this has taught, if not all of us, then most of us, how vital those one-on-one moments can be. That quality time. You gotta fight for them, but there's truly nothing better. Last one. What's a book you each have read this year that has either opened your mind to a topic or an idea you hadn't considered before, or has actually changed your thinking in some way? And we got a whole list up on Bookshop, and we'll throw those up on it.
I did something I've never done this year, or rather my whole life. I went on a thought week after I changed my roles. And for those of you who don't know, I think Bill Gates made it popular.
Yeah.
Go to one of his fancy houses and spend weeks at a time.
Right. People describe it as a cabin, I think. I'm fairly sure it's not like a cabin. But
yeah, well, I didn't have any of those. But I did go Airbnb it, actually in a cabin in the woods for a few days. And I read a bunch of books. And one of the books that I actually had on my shelf that I hadn't read was given to me by Clay Christensen before he passed. It's a book I think the last book he wrote, which was called How Will You Measure Your Life? And it was just a great moment for me as I was transitioning roles from working 20 years at the utility and transitioning from the startup that I helped create into this VC space that its mission as a whole was just really important to me and one of the drivers for me getting there. And so one of the things that was talked about in this book was your own life mission statement and how you operate and how you measure your life, right, at the end of the day. And I think Clay had a really great perspective on it based on just the number of things that he had gone through in his life and the number of students that he touched while at Harvard. And so it's one that I definitely would recommend. And it's one of those books where I actually wish I read it earlier in life because it would give me probably a better compass for the things that are important and really answer a lot of the why of what you do. And for me, it was I'm a builder, and I like to build things at scale. Or at least I want to build things at scale to help the people of this world and the communities that I'm in. And so this kind of really honed some of that for me and really help put I think the right kind of focus going into this role as a managing partner of Elevate Future Fund, and help me understand the type of impact that I want to make. But that's really important for me, but also in the communities that I live and that I serve.
I love that. I too have tried to spend some real time thinking about that in the past few years. I think kids do that to you a little bit. Pandemics do that to you a little bit. But it's helpful to have somebody who actually can so eloquently, like he did, think through those things on the page so that applies to more folks. Vida, what about you? What's on your bookshelf?
So a few books, but one that I was able to get to more recently is Resisting Happiness by Matthew Kelly.
Okay.
And so it's a book that does provide, advice and, practical advice around the self-sabotage that happens when you are trying to live a good life. But there are different things that put the I guess you could say, like, put the chink in the happiness armor. And so this book is essentially like a reflection on how it is that we can, dive into those rabbit holes dive into those rabbit holes and kind of lose our way and lose sight of the journey that we're on, and therefore our happiness. So that's a really great read and a great reminder to, to make sure to not be your worst enemy when you are on your life journey.
Sure. I think that's very helpful. The easy thing everybody always says is, as you beat yourself up, like, oh, would you say this to your best friend or your kid or whatever? And you're like, no, of course not. But I'm probably going to continue saying it to myself. But we really should not do that. It's just not helpful in any way. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing those. We'll put those on the list. Y'all, where can our listeners follow you online and how the fund is going and everything before we get you out of here?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it now is going to energyimpactpartners.com. We will make some updates on how we're progressing on our website.
Rock and roll.
And you can find us on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Are either of you on Twitter at all? I mean, for better or worse, clearly, like, it depends on the day.
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm
awesome.
not on Twitter in any visible way, but
bless you.
I may have to get on there.
No. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. It's dangerous. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your time, for everything you're doing, the path you're carving, the effect you're having, as we truly try to build something new here that just includes more folks and considers more folks. So thank you, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Quinn.
Thanks,
all right.
Quinn.
Awesome. Thanks to our incredible guest today, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. We hope this episode has made your commute or awesome workout or dishwashing or fucking dog walking late at night that much more pleasant. As a reminder, please subscribe to our free email newsletter at importantnotimportant.com. It is all the news most vital to our survival as a species.
And you can follow us all over the internet. You can find us on Twitter at importantnotimp.
Just
so weird. Also on Facebook and Instagram at Important Not Important. Pinterest and Tumblr, the same thing. So check us out, follow us, share us, like us. You know the deal. And please subscribe to our show wherever you listen to things like this. And if you're really fucking awesome, rate us on Apple Podcasts. Keep the lights on. Thanks.
Please.
And you can find the show notes from today right in your little podcast player and at our website, importantnotimportant.com.
Thanks to the very awesome Tim Blaine for our jammin' music, to all of you for listening, and finally, most importantly, to our moms for making us. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.